السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. وبشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So move on, juz number 12 today. Juz number 12 begins with Surah Hud. In this surah, actually, this surah, there's a hadith where the Prophet, the Umar radiallahu anhu asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, shipped the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, you got white hair. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Shaybatni Hud wa akhawatiha." He said it was Surah Hud and surahs like it that made my hairs white. Because in it, the message is such a powerful one where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very, being very harsh and being very stern with the believers, with everybody really. So, it begins with whoever you are, Allah has already decreed what you will eat and where you will live. Qadr. So there's a brief explanation of qada wal qadr, or fate, taqdir as we call it. It mentioned in the opening verses. Many of the mushrikeen of Makkah, they associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they believe in other gods, but they never fully rely on those gods. And this is where, in times of crisis and difficulty, they don't call on their false deities. They call on the one true Allah only. That's what they're looking for. They don't care about anyone else. But when they're in good time, they're perfectly fine with worshiping random gods. So then verse number 13 to about 14, again, the Quran issues a challenge, right? So, if you can't succeed in producing the Quran, then you know that there's only one God. There's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about it. There's nothing that mankind cannot replicate. Right? There's nothing that has come to this world or that has been produced in this world that has not been replicated or reproduced in other places, right? There's some, that's one gift Allah has given us. We can replicate and reproduce anything except the Quran. The Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the one thing that we cannot. And this is where we have to be very honest with ourselves, especially those who believe that they can replicate the Quran. They keep trying and failing, and you have to admit there's only one God, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever your false assumptions, whether you're a polytheist or atheist, you must admit that Allah is the one true God only. And what this goes to show is that this world undoubtedly has an effect on us. People influence us, and they affect our beliefs. They influence our beliefs. This could be a person, maybe you can be at work. A lot of times we use children as an example, but it's not just children. It can be adults, a person who is a professional at work. You have your colleagues, they talk. These things influence you, and this is where Muslim, we have to be a strong character. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Our belief is our belief, and we are, unquestionable in our belief and unshakable in our belief. Then verse number 25, the story of Nuh alayhi salam. His people consider him unworthy. They ridiculed him. They told him all sorts of things, and still he was told to continue striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Allah's cause. So this is a big message for us. Verse number 38 to about 39 talks about his struggles, what kind of hardships he went to. Today we face many, many challenges. Islamophobia, it's here. It's actually it's almost a part of the culture. Just like in many other countries, racism and discrimination has become part of the culture, part of the fabric of that society, and Islamophobia has become the fabric of the world society today. But this doesn't mean we stop. We must remain steadfast on Tawheed and maintain our aqeedah and our beliefs. Then verse 42 to 46, Nuh alayhi salam's son is, his example is given where he runs away to the mountains to escape the flood. But no matter where he ran, you cannot run away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no escape away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here, this is also a very important message. His father was constantly trying to give him advice, and he didn't listen. If your parents are alive, your mother, your father are alive, try to appreciate their advice and their wisdom. Appreciate it, and where you can, try to follow it. Yeah, of course, our parents are not knowledgeable on every aspect of life, but things that they do know about, especially when it comes to matter of deen and religion, take their advice, heed their advice. Religion and deen is something that all parents, most people can give to their children. So follow their advice and be good. in this world, and appreciate them. Then verse number 50 starts the story of Hud alayhi salam. From 53 to around 54, they claim their deities have an effect. They have affected them. So they make all types of claim. Eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise comes, and they were all destroyed. Same thing with people of Thamud. They tell him, we had a good hope in you. We thought you would become something. And what's it called? In verse number 62, the incident of the camel coming out of the mountain. And in 66, it mentioned that they killed it. And after they killed it, 3 days after that, the punishment came. The story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his wife Sarah was barren, and they were given a glad tidings of children. Lut alayhi salam and his homosexual community, eventually they were all destroyed. The people of Madian and Shu'aib alayhi salam, they threatened to kill him from that's 84 to 95. Then from 96 to 101, the story of Fir'aun. So, and then verse 102, in it, essentially all these stories are there, and each and every one of them have a different theme. They have a different message. And we're meant to focus on that message, learn that message. That's why they're being brought in succession, one after the other. The surah closes with a plea of patience. Allah does not waste the effort of patient people. You are being patient, be steadfast, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of what you're in. Pray to Allah and be patient. Don't, act, irresponsibly and act irrationally and then, expect good things to happen. In verse 120, these stories, again, of the prophets, they're there to strengthen our hearts and a warning to the weak people in faith. We all have different issues and different struggles that we're going through, and each of these prophets, they represent a different struggle and issue. And what we have to do is read and learn from these lessons, inshallah. Then move on to Surah Yusuf. Surah Yusuf, this is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. This surah only covers the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, and this is the only place in the entire Quran where the story of Yusuf alayhi salam is even mentioned. So he had 12 brothers. And when he saw a dream, the sun, moon, 12 prospering towards. He was a child. He didn't know what was going on, and he shared it. And his father told him, "Don't share this dream with your siblings. Right? They're not going to like it." He didn't understand, or his father's advice at the time. It's not that he didn't value it; he didn't really understand it. So he shared it, and eventually they understood what this dream would mean. They took him, they threw him in the well because they felt that he was already the favorite of the father, and they took his clothes. But what they did was, instead of tearing it up, they just put blood on it and they showed their father. The father understood that they had done something, but he couldn't prove it. He couldn't say anything. So there are many lessons. If you have Allah in your mind, no matter what happened, he went through so many difficulties, the hardship, and the whole surah is about one after the other what he went through. From being thrown into the well, then he's being picked up, and then he's being sold as a slave. Then a high-ranking Egyptian official buys him. He has a wife. His wife tries to seduce him. He doesn't obey her command. She has him thrown in jail. And then in the jail, he meets two people, and one of them sees bird. They see a dream. One has the other one Jews. One who the birds were eating from his head. He told them that you're going to be executed. And the other one was to survive, and he told him that don't forget me and mention me with the king, because he wanted his justice, his chance to talk about his part of the story. Eventually, the king sees a dream: seven fat cows eating seven skinny cows. Then that one prisoner, he realized he remembered Yusuf alayhi salam, that he knew how to interpret dreams. So he went back and he remembered Yusuf alayhi salam, and he told him about the king, and the king eventually called him, and then eventually this is where the surah ends. And again, there's just so many things here. Going back to this seduction story, she wanted to seduce Yusuf alayhi salam, meaning she wanted him to have the same intentions as her. And she was trying to get him to think like her. But he didn't change. This is such an important message when it comes to influence. Going back to the topic of the early part of the juz, talking about influence, it is ending with influence. This is such a destructive power in mankind's life. We are constantly influenced, one way or the other, and Allah's warning us against this. There are many people, they have their own values, they have their own life, and they don't care about Allah and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You do, you worship Allah. Don't follow their intention. Don't try to think like them. They're going to try to make you think like them. Don't fall for it. And even, eventually he's stuck in her house. He comes to manhood, but still he remembers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the true master, and he remembers the people's favor upon him. Right? He remember that the person who took him out of that, at the end of the day, yeah, he might be kept as a servant, but he did him a favor by taking by saving him from a much worse fate. So he appreciated that the favors of other people, and he did not want to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from here, that steadfastness is very important, not just for children, yes, especially for kids and youth, but also adults. We get influenced on a daily basis. We don't even realize it. Look at politics. We get swayed from here to here, this way to the other. And you look at even mainstream Muslim politics. Mainstream Muslim politics is leaning more towards the left. Even though in terms of Islamic values, we have less in common with the left and a lot more with the right, right? But people just don't think about it. They just see one individual, they hear stuff in the news, and like, no, we have to go against this. And we lost the ability to think objectively and to really follow the truth and follow the evidence where it is. May Allah protect us and save us, inshallah, and keep us on the straight path. And inshallah, we'll start the next